What fuels me, beyond my daily coffee of course, is having meaningful conversations with leaders driving change within their communities, innovative startup founders, grassroots change makers. I've come to realize that leaders come in many different forms, and each one inspires me with something new. Come and join me, explore life-changing moments, and look at the mindsets shaping leadership today. Let's navigate the journey of growth and transformation together. Welcome to another episode. Today, I'm delighted to have with me Crystal Lim-Lange, the CEO and co-founder of Forest Wolf, a global consultancy firm specializing in future-ready skills and leadership development. Crystal's diverse background includes investment banking, equity sales, philanthropy, education, and leading large-scale change initiatives. As the founding director of the Center for Future-Ready Graduates at the National University of Singapore, she pioneered programs that still impact many students and professionals today. Crystal continues to inspire leaders and digital natives alike to unlock their human potential, build future-ready mindsets, and drive meaningful change in the digital era, making her the perfect guest for my podcast. So let's get started. Hi, Crystal. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Imane. It's so great to see you again.
So I know you for so long, and I've been really inspired by you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey, Crystal.
I've always been obsessed with helping people unlock their fullest potential. And you know how it's that whole thing of like looking at your life backwards and connecting the dots. What I do today is I run several businesses, but they all have to do with learning and transformation and leadership. I'm helping large corporations such as yourselves and leaders develop their social emotional intelligence and people skills and connect better, but on a very deep level. It's not just like executive presence or branding, which is very important, no doubt, but it's looking back to really like what makes you tick and like what are your blind spots, like for instance, are you really conflict avoidant, and where did that belief come from, and like how can we work on those blind spots? So we do a lot of leadership skills, and then another part of my business is helping people find more productivity and more personal growth in their lives. And we run a membership club called Deep Human Club, which is like a 6-month mentoring program for people who really want to optimize their lives. They want to hustle hard, they want to work really hard, but they don't want to lose themselves and their authenticity along the way. So that's what I do now, but my history goes from investment banking, where I learned about the power of communication and really connecting with your audience and learning how to be very agile and like having a lot of resilience. I think banking teaches you that. And then moving into the world of entrepreneurship. And then also I worked in senior leadership in education as a director for the National University of Singapore. So very diverse sort of CV.
You touched on something that's really close to my heart, which is authenticity. And we keep saying, bring your authentic self to work. I definitely will not be, no makeup, pajama, mom authentic, right?
Yes.
There is certain level of authenticity and balance in corporate
sure.
that I struggle with even for myself. So that's something that I would love to learn from you. How authentic is authentic?
Okay, so in the world of work, there is no such thing as 100% authenticity, as we all know, right? Because it's not a situation where the client calls and be like, I don't want to deal with your face today. That's what authentically I want to say, like, whoa, yeah, but I can't, because in a corporate world, right, we are representing a team, a brand, a company, and we are professionals. And I always say that professionalism trumps the authenticity. Like, first and foremost, you are a professional.
Yes.
And then you need to kind of figure out how to work your authenticity into that. And I think that the ratio is different for each person. It's so context dependent on your sector. If I am maybe an artist where my art is my life and that is my profession, maybe I can be like 80%, 90% authentic. But, for those of us who are maybe in sales or maybe in banking, maybe it comes down to maybe I can be 50 or 60% authentic, but 40% of it is my professional self. So I don't think there's a right answer. we cannot be so inauthentic that it is totally incongruent, that I'm two-faced, you know what I mean? Like I'm at work, I'm this kind of person, and then in my personal life, I'm like totally different person. Because now the borders are blurring, right? I mean, we see like LinkedIn, we show up on Instagram or whatever, and like people see us in many different sort of contexts, and there needs to be at least some thread of congruence so that like the core of you kind of remains the same, but like how you present yourself may be a little different. I guess the second point I want to make is that with authenticity at work, we have to remember that we are ultimately delivering a message at any point of time. Now, we need to be mindful that nothing we do or say should distract from that message. So it doesn't matter what it is. For example, if I'm wearing loud, jangly jewelry, that is part of my personal style. And every time I move my head, my earrings jangle. Literally, people can't hear my voice because they are so distracted by all this other stuff. And while that may be authentic to you, is it distracting from your message? And I think for me, I always look at, I'm being hired and I'm in this role to really connect and deliver this message, whatever it is. And everything I do has to be in service of that in some way.
It's probably trivial to say about wardrobe as well, but let's say when I was chief of staff for 2 years, I was wearing a certain aspect, like, corporate dress, suits, and all that stuff. Then I moved to the digital native and the younger generation, completely switched to jeans. Whereas I wouldn't want to wear a jean to meet a minister. But both of them are, probably my authentic self is jean and casual, but again, it may distract from the message of chief of staff, and therefore I needed to adjust the wardrobe. It's trivial, but in the same time, all these small nuances where you're not bringing your whole authentic self, but you're bringing your core authentic self.
You know, what I think is that appropriateness is respect. So what you're saying is that, like, look, I wear jeans to be with you, the Gen Z, because I respect you all. I love this vibe. I'm connecting with you, and that is a respectful thing to do. If I'm going to see a minister, I'm not going to wear jeans because that's not appropriate or respectful. And I want to ultimately come across as somebody who is respectful and aware. You don't want to come across as somebody who's clueless in the corporate world.
You hit it right in the head. Another topic that I loved, and we've spoke about it so many times, the inner work.
People who haven't done inner work are not self-aware. We need to become aware of our belief system, our conditioning when we were shaped as we were growing up. How did that impact us? We need to understand our blind spots. So let me give you a concrete example because it sounds a little bit abstract, right? Let's say I'm working with a leader and they haven't done their inner work and they are not aware that they are really conflict avoidant. They may be avoiding all the difficult conversations that they need to have. They may be seeking harmony, when the situation maybe calls for assertiveness than harmony, right? And they don't even know that they are doing that. And maybe if they had done the inner work, they would have realized that maybe somewhere in my past, in my childhood perhaps, I got the message that conflict was bad. Or maybe I learned to be a people pleaser because I saw my mom was a people pleaser. And I just learned that that is the way I need to be. And then I unconsciously become a people pleaser. And I just think that's how life is. So when we do the inner work, and there's many ways to do it. There's therapy, there's coaching, there's self-reflection, there's journaling, there's, body practices. But it is really about, am I consciously setting aside some time to develop my own self-awareness and learn more about myself? Why did I react this way when this person triggered me? Or whether it's going for lunch with an ex-colleague or a mentor and saying, you know what, can you actually let me know, how am I showing up? If you were to give me some advice, all this is inner work, but it's that process of being really more aware about who we are and how we're showing up. And also like peeling back the layers of the onion to really get to the core of us. And just now we were talking about authenticity. I don't think it's possible to be authentic without actually doing some form of inner work. Because for you to be really authentic, you need to, on the one level, know who you are and know your values. When we are powered by our values, right? We're like, okay, freedom, growth, curiosity, all these are my values. They're who I am. And whether I'm talking in a business meeting or whether I'm setting up a charity or whether I'm, appearing on a podcast, these values words are going to come out and going to vibe with whoever I'm speaking to.
100%. I love the inner work. Probably before my 40s, I never thought of inner work. Like, I can just go, 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 hustle, 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 hustle. This is who I am, deal with it. And then as soon as I reached my 40s, I was like, who am I? What do I stand for?
Without these titles, without the company, without all of that, who
Remove
am I?
all these things.
Yes.
Who is Imane? And that inner work, I think, helped me become a better person, because I understand myself, and by understanding myself, I can also understand the other people, and be empathic to them. So I love this inner work. I think more and more leaders should look into inner work
Yes.
to become better leaders.
Yes, absolutely. The world is evolving so much on the outside. Just think of how fast AI is like growing and how the landscape of everything is changing. And we also have to be mindful, are we also updating our internal OS? Because it's almost like we are being asked to install more and more apps. Every day it's like, okay, install another app and like update this one and whatever. But if we don't update our own operating system, then we can't handle it. We actually are like using a very old operating system of beliefs, mindsets, whatever values, all these things that we don't question and we don't patch and we don't update. So for me, inner work is like that. You're upgrading your internal operating system so that you can meet the demands of the external world.
What we were 20 years ago is not where we are now. And that was the PC Gen revelation or revolution, and now it's the AI revolution. And how are you progressing? Oh my God! And I'm still in this.
For sure, you can have it.
I am still in this. And now we're talking about leaders and the inner work and the authenticity. And sometimes it's a lot to take for leaders. Being a leader is not a title. It's all these things and responsibilities that you have.
Yes.
How would leaders right now manage the uncertainty, the burnout, the decision fatigue? I mean, it's a lot on the leaders to take.
For sure. In fact, like we like to say that in the past, right, leaders could be so-called bosses or managers.
Yeah.
But today, especially with the younger generation of talent, right, they almost expect you to be their boss, their best friend, their confidant, their inspiration. They want you to be therapist. They want you to be the person who, it gives them pep talks. You're expected on some level to fulfill all of this. And I think quite rightly also because we're spending more and more of our time at work. So in the olden days where we clocked on and then we clocked out of work and we had fax machines and work didn't even enter your psyche, after you went back home, it was like this very clear hygienic boundary, like this is not contaminated with that. You could be like, okay, my boss is just my boss. But if we are in the world of work where every waking hour of the day, I'm somehow thinking about work, I'm thinking about my boss, whatever the expectations are higher of leaders to almost like shepherd our flock through these troubling times because they need a lot more from us because work is asking a lot more from them. It's not easy, but one of the most important qualities of a leader is to have self-mastery. Before we can master others or lead others, we first need to learn how to lead ourselves. And there are so many leaders whom I see who are externally very good at leading, but internally they are really bad leaders. For example, maybe they have no self-control when it comes to one area of their life, or maybe they keep on making bad decisions in their relationships, or maybe their kids aren't talking to them because they sacrifice too much. So like outwardly, it looks like, wow, this person's really successful, but internally, they're just not congruent with that. So I think if leaders really want to be sustainable and successful, they need to actually learn how to do the inner work so that they are self-aware. So self-awareness is key. And then also they need to really hand on heart figure out what are their priorities, because you can't do everything. You need to be very honest with yourself. Like in this season of my life, like what do I want to ruthlessly prioritize? And then also on another level, leaders need to be able to self-master their emotions, because we live in a world that's, face it, quite triggering. There's a lot of triggers, whether you read the news or whether you scroll on Instagram, you're constantly like being triggered by more and more data, more and more volatility that's out there. So we need to kind of like figure out how to master our own emotions so we're not so reactive. What triggers us is something from our past. So let me give you an example. Let's say I get very triggered because this person interrupted me during a meeting. And then this guy mansplained something to me, mansplained, right? And then I realized that my cheeks are getting hot. My heart is beating faster. Immediately, I'm lost control. I'm not thinking about the presentation I'm supposed to give. And my whole mind is like, I'm going to get you. And that immediately means that I have lost my self-mastery. I have gone into fight or flight, reactive mode rather than being in full control. A lot of times when this happens, the trigger is related to something historical. I'm just giving an example. Maybe my father maybe didn't respect me and my opinions. Maybe he always put me down. Or maybe I had an ex-boss who kind of always belittled me or explained things in a certain way. But what I've done is that I've actually taken that hurt or that pain that was from the past, and then I've actually now superimposed it over this situation, so that when this guy interrupts me, right, instead of seeing this person, I'm actually seeing, oh, my dad, oh, my ex-boyfriend, oh, my old boss, and I haven't healed or brought awareness to that old wound. And because of that, I react in a very overpowering way. And it's not about this guy, it's the baggage. And my therapist always says, if it's hysterical, it's historical. So that is why I think it's really important for leaders to do the inner work, so that they have the ability to bring awareness to, okay, this is actually not appropriate for this situation. I should really take this offline because this is my stuff. And therefore we learn to be a lot more objective and a lot better, more rational. Emotions have a function, but we have to be in control of the emotions, or master the emotions, rather than the emotions are running us and we have no control. We're just held hostage.
What I feel is, another side of it is give ourselves grace as leaders. Let's say that I was historical. At that moment, I did react the way I reacted. I can always do the work after that and come back and talk to that person with grace to say, look, I overreacted yesterday, but it wasn't on you. It's my baggage, it's my story. Probably apologize or being vulnerable. You will win over that person 100% more. Yes, we can do the work to avoid those situations. And if the situation happens, give ourselves a grace and go back and say, look, I'm working on myself. That role models more about, the inner work, where we continue working on ourselves. We are a work in progress until we die. So that's the growth. That's how we are.
And that's the authenticity. I think one of the most powerful things is to remember that when we actually have those authentic conversations, a lot of people are fearful that if I reveal this, then that's the end of the relationship, or you will reject me. Because ultimately, a lot of us have a fear of being rejected if we unmask and we show our true selves. But what I've actually learned during sales was that when I take off the mask, sometimes when I made a big mistake, and I actually just go into authenticity and say I really messed up. I own it completely. I am so embarrassed by what I did and ... And when I'm really authentic, I'm so amazed by how clients can resonate with them because it's fresh. And they hardly see this kind of authenticity in the corporate world. So they're like, oh my God, should we go for lunch?
Yes.
And then the relationship ends up twice as good, like you said, like it was before. So my therapist, he always says, intimacy is into me, I let you see.
Wow.
Yeah. So intimacy. So it's like, if I really am trusting of you, I'll let you see into me. So the moment I say to you, Imane, yesterday during that conversation, I have to say I wasn't at my best. I regret what I said to you. I didn't say it with enough skill, enough care. I feel terrible about it, and I couldn't sleep last night. I hope that you find it in you to forgive me, or something like that. Whatever version of that. But in that moment when I'm just leveling with you, we feel closer, right?
Yes.
That's the intimacy that we need.
The other person will accept it because it's really hard to be vulnerable. It's really hard to open.
Really hard, yes.
And therefore they will say, oh my God, she opened up while it's really hard. I myself cannot open up. They respect you more.
It's courage. The French courage, as you know, comes from the root word cœur, right? Cœur means heart.
Yes.
Courage is about going into your heart to do the heartfelt thing. It's very hard. For instance, people often associate vulnerability with weakness. Oh, that's so soft or whatever. No, vulnerability is super hard. So for instance, going back to the earlier example, if this guy interrupted me during a meeting and mansplained, right? Less courageous approach would be, I am not going to tell that guy that he offended me. I'm instead going to walk out of that meeting. I'm going to go behind that person's back and I'm going to say like to all my friends, hey Shanti, did you see what Greg did in the meeting? Such a beep. Imane, do you know what happened just now? But I'm going to like gossip about him and blah, 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 victim mindset, it was just like that. I was helpless. He made me. I had no choice. He did this in the meeting. How terrible. So all that is victim mindset. And it's not courage. The courageous thing to do in that situation after the meeting, hey, Greg, I need to speak to you for 5 minutes. Just now, when I was presenting and you interrupted me twice, I have to admit, I felt a little taken aback. That is courage. That is adulting. That is the role of a leader, to actually be able to model that degree of authenticity and mastery. But I didn't do it in a way that was hysterical. I didn't do it in a way like, oh, you bullied me, or like whatever. That is like, not in control of your emotions. In that instance, I was talking about a genuine emotion, which is I was surprised, I was hurt, I was disappointed, but I'm doing it in a way that is like very self-mastered in a way.
And something you mentioned earlier about leaders when it comes to the younger generation, I feel that with the digital natives, and I have a younger team, sometimes I hear stop mothering them because I need to take care of everything to make them
Yes.
succeed and get their superpowers. My next topic, it's slightly lighthearted, which is the Gen Z, and they're entering the workforce. And sometimes the leaders feel like mothering them or parenting them, which could be good and bad. It's debatable. How do we manage the Gen Z at work?
Very important to have that awareness to know when you are rescuing, which is not good, and when you are coaching or supporting, which is like more optimal. When we are in rescuer mindset, we are over functioning and we are over responsible. So rescuer is the opposite of victim mindset. When I'm in victim mindset, oh, I'm hopeless, it's helpless, I have no choice, I am under responsible. I am not appropriately responsible. I'm like abdicating, giving away my responsibility. However, there is the opposite, which is equally toxic, which is like if I'm in rescuer mindset, then I am like overly responsible. I'm doing for others what they could be doing for themselves. And in a way, I'm infantilizing them. I'm keeping them too small for where they need to be. And when I'm in rescuer mindset, I put myself up here and everyone else down here, and it keeps them small. It's equally, in a way, disempowering as victim mindset. Now, if I'm in a compulsive rescuer, it also requires some inner work to examine, where did this come from? Was I the eldest daughter in a family?
Was.
There we go. Was I the eldest daughter and I had to grow up too fast and my parents were too busy and I ended up taking and becoming overly responsible and losing my ability to self-care and That's the inner work. So that's the piece where we need to be aware, like, okay, that is one of my patterns. And I need to understand when I am using the gifts of the pattern and when the pattern is using me. So that is the difference between choice and compulsion. Because there's gifts to being responsible as well, right? There's gifts to being that position. I can use the best of those gifts. But if I feel like I have no choice but to do this all the time, cut and paste, in my work, I'm like this, in my personal life, my friend wants to borrow money, I will lend, this parent says, can you do the carpool? Okay, I will do. Then you are just a victim because you're just doing this with no compulsion. Coming back to your question about Gen Zs, how are we with them? I think it's important for us to give them their own opportunity to grow their own resilience muscles. Now, resilience is a muscle that is developed from when you fall down, you get up. And every single time you are getting up, you actually get stronger. It's the getting up muscle. Now, if we are always caught before we fall, like you're hanging around going, oh, correct that on the website. Hey, have you done that? Then they're never allowed to develop that muscle. But at the same time, for leaders, you cannot just let everything fail. So you need to pick safe sandboxes where you let people fail. So the important things like that client deal, that whatever mandate or whatever, of course, you're not going to let fail. But people, you need to kind of figure out some kind of safe areas in which your staff can be like given responsibility to run with it. And then you're doing less of that hand holding and everything. So maybe it's like something that is non-revenue generating or something like, oh, I'm going to put you in charge of this networking event
Yes.
or whatever.
Or offsite.
Yeah, some offsite, you're going to run with it. At the end of the day, if it's a disaster, then, it doesn't
That's
impact.
fine.
That's fine. But people feel that they were given some sort of opportunity to test their leadership skills and so forth. And also sometimes we can't expect people to always do it our way. 80% done is 100% perfect. I mean, it's amazing. Because like if I were to take over everything, the team can maybe only produce 2x. But if I were to say, okay, maybe my quality of work is like 100%, and maybe the rest of the team is only 50 to 80%. But if I have like 20 of them, and I times that, and I actually, let them do all this stuff, we're going to end up with multiples, and I'm going to grow my team. And actually the multiplier effect is going to be that, I created so much more value for Microsoft or my organization than if I were a micromanager and run everything past me and then I become the bottleneck.
Final wisdom words for the audience.
I like to say, take your work seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And talking about Gen Zs, that's what I tell them. Because sometimes I think the danger is that I take myself too seriously and it's like, oh, how could you call me at that and get offended because somebody said something or take something personally. Oh, you criticized me in a way that hurt my ego. So that's taking yourself very seriously. But I find that when people do that, then they lose the opportunity to learn and they lose the opportunity to give others grace. Sometimes we are all busy and we say things and it's just work, it's just business. It doesn't mean that it's personal. Don't personalize things. Let go, move on. Give yourself grace, give other people grace.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming and thank you for giving all this wisdom to the audience
It's
here.
a pleasure, always. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching.